In 1976, George Lucas's editor John Jimson finished the first cut of The Star Wars. This was a moment that George had been working toward for the better part of the decade. Needless to say, what he saw was a total train wreck.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
I'm ready for anything.
It was a tonal mess and not at all what George had envisioned. This cut famously got scrapped and was heavily altered into the film we know today by Marshall Lucas, Richard Chew, and Paul Hirsch. Even one of the most iconic sequences, the Mos Eisley Cantina, got changed not once, but twice into the cut we know today.
Who's scruffy looking?
The cantina scene is probably amongst all the Star Wars scenes to ever see the big screen, one of the most iconic. It's been referenced numerous times in pop culture, and for many Star Wars fans, it's a scene we can probably recite from memory. Okay, maybe that's just me, but what if I told you there was an alternate cut to this scene that not only dramatically alters the tone of the scene, but could have changed one of the main characters forever? The scene as we know it goes like this. Luke, Ben, and the droids head into the cantina looking for a pilot to take them to Alderaan. The droids are escorted outside, and Luke is left to experience the bar and his patrons for himself. Without realizing it, he picks a fight with Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba before Ben comes to his rescue by whipping out his lightsaber and dismembering Ponda before he can get a shot off. That was after the lost cut, the first cut of the film that John Jimson put together for George Lucas in 1976. Quick sidebar here before you go looking for it, you should know that this cut can't be found on the internet or at your local video store. It's not technically lost either, it's tucked away safely at Lucasfilm. Very few have gotten to see this actual cut of the film. There are only a few documented experiences of it, and the most notable is an article in Star Wars Insider. But you can see lots of the deleted scenes and some of the alternate cuts right here on YouTube. Anyway, that moment is one of the many climaxes in this film, and it's our first look in the movies at what a Jedi and his weapon are capable of doing. But the cut wasn't always like that. In fact, there are two other takes from the lost cut of Star Wars that show a totally different ending to that climactic skirmish between Ponda and Obi-Wan. In the final cut of the film, the cut we know today, Ponda's arm is cut off at the elbow and shows his hand still holding on to his blaster. Ponda's arm in this shot contains a fingered hand. It's not alien at all, really. It's very humanoid. But what if I told you it didn't always look like that? In an alternate take, Ponda's arm is dismembered and it looks more like a hoof.
This little one's not worth the effort. Come, let me get you something.
It's very obviously more alien, but ultimately this was cut from the film. I can see why. We see a lot of ridiculous stuff in Star Wars that really doesn't make any sense, but this image of a gun just being stuck to a hoof that is probably made out of wood, I think crosses the line. I mean, how does that even work? But that's actually not the only alternate take of this climax. There is a completely different ending that doesn't involve an arm at all. In this next take, Obi-Wan whips out his saber and slices Ponda Baba's head off at the neck.
Whoa.
That's brutal. This one is much more clear that George made this change. Having Luke's mentor figure chop off a head so early in the film completely recontextualizes how Obi-Wan is perceived. It also would have completely changed how the Jedi work in those first few films. Imagine a Star Wars where Jedi are just cutting off heads of random citizens at every gun pull. That would completely blur the lines between who is considered the good guys and the bad guys in the trilogy. Yoda's whole line in The Empire Strikes Back,
"A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack."
would have never happened because Obi-Wan went off and cut off a guy's head. I can tell this was definitely a George Lucas change because he was always very weary about what words the Jedi were associated with and what they did during the films. The most famous occurrence of George being hyper-aware of Jedi-related words is in Return of the Jedi, or should I say, Revenge of the Jedi.
Revenge of the Jedi.
As many of you know, Revenge of the Jedi was the original title for the third Star Wars film before George Lucas famously decided that Jedi don't actually take revenge on others, so the title was changed shortly before its release.
Return of the Jedi.
I think we see an early version of that George Lucas at work here in this alternate take, and he makes the right choice. For as jarring as it is to see a whole arm laying on the floor bleeding out at this point in the film, it would have either been way too comical with that hoof-looking arm and way too violent if Obi-Wan had taken the head off. I think the final version is the perfect amount of jarring and believable to make this moment work. What do you guys think? Is the final version better, or should George have kept the hoof or the head? I want to hear. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.